Welcome to Prizefights podcast. My name is Josh. Today's podcast will run later than the typical 10-minute variety as we talk about three subjects. Exciting week for boxing. The first subject is Shane Mosley and Winky Wright's retirement. Then we'll talk about the Bute-Froch fight from a couple weeks ago. And then we'll finish with some thoughts on Manny Pacquiao versus Timothy Bradley the day before the fight. First of all, Winky Wright and Shane Mosley both decided to retire this week. Winky Wright lost his last fight pretty decidedly, and Shane Mosley also lost his fight rather decidedly against Canelo Alvarez. Both fighters are similar in that they were guys who took every fight available. They did not pad their resume. They were true warriors. They fought the big names. Winky Wright was a 154-pound. He was junior middle. Shane was more of a welterweight, although he has fought several fights at 154. Probably too many. I don't think he's won a single fight at 154. Maybe against Vargas. I'm not sure. But both fighters are Hall of Fame caliber fighters. And I say it's good news that they retired because both guys have not only lost their last fight, but lost several fights, and they've taken some shots. They have a very lengthy resume. They've had a lot of professional boxing fights. It's time to hang it up. Both fighters were 40 or over, and I just want to recognize those fighters and thank them for their service to boxing. They made boxing a better sport. Winky Wright and Shane Mosley actually fought a couple times at 154. Winky Wright was the second guy to defeat Shane Mosley. The previous guy was Vernon Forrest. Rest in peace. Shane fought Forrest twice at 154. I think it was a mistake for him to move up from welterweight. And Vernon Forrest knocked him down a couple times in one round. Beat him in both those fights, and then not too long after that, he fought Winky Wright twice at 154. Winky Wright also won those two fights. So Shane Mosley bounced back pretty well after that, continued to fight at 147, racked up some victories, and then he fought Miguel Cotto. And before the Cotto loss, which was a controversial decision, a very close fight, very competitive fight, very entertaining fight. I encourage you to watch that on YouTube somewhere if you can find it. He had only lost to two guys before that. Happens to be 4 losses because he fought both guys twice. So Shane Mosley, what you want to point out with him is that he was in a lot of these fights. He's never been knocked out. Only been knocked down, as we'll talk about in a minute, by two guys. And he's best known for the fights against De La Hoya. The first one made him a household name. Second one was a little more controversial. He won both of those. And I think that if you want to watch one fight for Shane Mosley, check out his fight against Antonio Margarito when Shane was an older fighter, around 38 years old, I think, and knocked out the ironclad chin, big guy, Antonio Margarito. Sensational performance from Shane Mosley. One thing you love about Shane Mosley is he always finishes, and he's there every round. But he's stubborn, and he has a hard chin, and it's time for him to retire, and he has. And I thank you, Shane, for a great career. I thank you, Winky Wright, for a great career. Winky Wright's known for beating Felix Trinidad and Shane Mosley twice. In fact, he fought those 3 fights in a row. Mosley, Trinidad. Those are 3 outstanding victories. And that's one reason why he's also a Hall of Fame fighter. So thank you, Winky Wright. Thank you, Shane Mosley. I'm glad you're retiring. You made boxing a better sport. And happy trails or something. Next subject I want to talk about is my thoughts on the Carl Froch versus Lucien Bute fight. And this happened in Nottingham, England, the first time Bute has fought anywhere but his hometowns of Romania and Canada. And he got knocked out. An undefeated fighter with a pretty good chin gets knocked out in the 5th round by Bute-Froch, a guy who hasn't knocked anyone out since Jermaine Taylor. But he is heavy-fisted. He has a couple decisions after that. But he's a heavy-fisted guy, so in one sense you can't be surprised. But in another sense, it's very, very, very surprising that happened. In fact, I watched this fight, and I was actually just very emotionally distraught. I didn't know how that could happen. It's not just because I like Bute. I'm a Bute guy. I was rooting for him. But I'm also an objective boxing fan, and I appreciate any solid, legitimate win. And I was just shocked that Lucian Bute could get knocked out in the middle rounds by Bute-Froch. Bute-Froch goes the distance with Ward. He goes the distance with Jean Pascal. He goes the distance with Arthur Abraham. And I thought that he would at least go the distance with Lucian Bute, because Lucian Bute is a very crafty southpaw, very quick on his feet. He's a movement fighter, and he's very intelligent in the ring. I read the experts' picks before this fight happened, and I don't think I saw anybody, maybe one guy who picked Froch for a knockout, but it was 11th or 12th round. Most people that were picking Froch, and there were a lot of experts picking Froch because of the hometown, and he's a really just a geeked up fighter, very strong will, confident. They picked him for a decision. So Froch by unanimous decision. A lot of them picked Froch by a split decision because they realized that Bute is not easy to hit. He's a movement fighter. He's very crafty and very intelligent. And no one's knocked him out before, aside from that controversial fight where he got probably knocked out in the 12th round. But it happened. He got knocked out. But I did not see one person picking Bute-Froch to win that fight by a middle round knockout. Vegas didn't count on that. The boxing experts didn't count on that. But that happened. So I want to give my thoughts on this fight. Lucian Bute, he fought the road warrior Glenn Johnson, a heavy-fisted guy with an ironclad chin. If there's any chin in boxing at that weight division better than Bute-Froch's, and Froch's chin is resilient, it's probably Glenn Johnson's. But even in a fight with a heavy-fisted guy who was the second guy to knock out Roy Jones Jr., Bute goes the distance, 12 rounds. And I just wonder how in the world does Bute get knocked out by Froch and not get knocked out by Glenn Johnson? It's hard to fathom, but it happened. I'm going to talk about why that happened here in a minute. Richard Dwyer has a pretty good video on this on YouTube. Check out him on YouTube. Just punch in Dwyer, D-W-Y-E-R, and you'll find some boxing videos. And then look for his comments on this fight. He has a couple post-fight videos, and he basically says that, look, Froch hit Bute with a good, clean right hand, and that took away Bute's legs. And because Bute is a movement fighter, and you lose your legs as a movement fighter, eventually you're going down. And that's right. That's the correct take on this. And some people can't fathom that. They think that it was a systematic breakdown by Froch, and that he had some kind of structural advantage, which isn't the case at all. That first round was Bute's round. The second round, the first part of it was Bute's. It was a competitive round. I think Froch stole it at the end. But until the third round, you have a close fight. But somewhere in the second or third round, Dwyer says third round, I think Bute's corner said it happened in the second round, he had his legs taken out from him with a clean shot to the face. And if you look at the results, you'll see Bute getting backed up into the corner and unable to escape. Bute said, I tried to use my left hand to get out of the ropes, but I wasn't able to do that. And that's because you don't have legs. And Bute is a very leg-oriented fighter. He's got great legs. He moves, he bends from the waist a lot. He has a lot of head movement. He gets in, gets out. But when you don't have your legs, you lose fights. But I even before that happened, I was surprised to see Bute getting on the ropes and staying on the ropes. That's not something you see a lot from him. He was way too tentative when he even had Froch on the ropes. So when Bute gets Froch on the ropes, he doesn't throw. And then he flips it over and gets on the ropes himself and gets pounded. I just don't see why he spent so much time on the ropes against a heavy-fisted, looping puncher, Carl Froch, but he did. And he got knocked out. And I thought after that, and I don't want to get too controversial, but I thought this is so surprising, this middle round knockout, this stoppage by Carl Froch. And there's been so much controversy in recent weeks with performance-enhancing drugs. What's going on? Did Bute throw the fight? Did he get in the corner on purpose? Is Froch on drugs? How did this happen? And I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm just saying that the level of shock was that. I couldn't believe this happened. I have no reason to think Froch is not clean, and he gets full credit for the victory. But I just wonder why a crafty, intelligent fighter, Bute, let this happen. Was it a lucky punch that got through and took his legs out? Perhaps. That's the only conclusion I can reach, aside from getting too skeptical and controversial. Another aspect of the fight that was weird was, you tell me when. I'm talking about weird stuff here. It was a weird finish, just a weird conclusion, but okay, he got caught with a good punch. But check out the behavior of the referee. When have you ever seen a referee wave the fight off when a guy's taking too much punishment and not answering? The referee will classically wave the hands in the air, meaning TKO, stoppage, fight's over, boom. And he does that. And Froch goes to the corner, jumps on the ropes, and celebrates as well he should have. The fight is over when the referee waves the hands and says stoppage. But after the camera is looking at Froch, it pans back over to Bute, and what's the referee doing? He's giving Bute a standing 8 count. I've never seen that. That's a strange, strange ending. Even stranger than the Cotto-Foreman ending. This is bizarre. Why did that happen? And what's going on in the referee's mind? How can you wave your hands and say stoppage and see Carl celebrating and everyone coming in the ring, and then you're giving him a standing 8 count, as if the fight's still going on and he has to respond to the 8 count? The guy's knocked out. And you know he was knocked out. His head literally fell over after a couple of those punches. And then after the standing 8 count, when you finally called it a knockout, which is really weird, Bute's legs buckle. The guy's just beat up and busted. And I just don't understand what's going on in the grander scheme of things, that the referee would make that big of a faux pas. Was Bute not supposed to lose in that round? Is this fight supposed to go on for a couple more rounds? Was it not supposed to be a knock? I don't know. I don't know. Strange stuff, though, but we give full credit to Carl Froch. And who's next for him? Well, obviously he wants to revenge his loss against Andre Ward. He has 2 losses against Andre Ward and Mikkel Kessler. And I haven't read the latest, but I believe he's probably going to be lining up a fight with Mikkel Kessler. I think that Kessler and Ward are better boxers. They're pure boxers. And that they will win because they do have a structural advantage over Carl Froch. But then again, is Bute not an excellent boxer? So if he lost to Carl Froch, maybe that one's up in the air too against Kessler. Or against Ward. Andre Ward's fighting Chad Dawson at 168 in September, a fight that I originally thought would be a snooze fest because both guys are just too tactical and too nerdy as fighters. But it might be a good fight. I thought that if that fight happens at 175, I give the advantage to Chad, but at 168, probably Ward. We'll see what happens, how Chad performs at one weight class below his normal. What's next for Bute? I think that Carl Froch is being a little bit too cocky here. It's true that some fighters, when they take their first beating like that, they get gun shy and they fall apart and never come back. It happened with Ricky Hatton. Ricky Hatton got demolished by a second round knockout from Pacquiao, and he's done. It happens. You get beat up, it gets in your head. People said that about Miguel Cotto. But Cotto came back. Cotto took some punishment from Margarito and from Pacquiao, but he came back and he put together several solid wins, even going up to 154. And it was very, very competitive against Floyd Mayweather. And you can listen to my last podcast for that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Bute's done just because he got knocked out in a very shocking fashion. I do know that Bute has a rematch clause in Canada with Froch. Whether he takes that or not remains to be seen. I would imagine he's not going to fight Froch next, but eventually that would be a good fight to see in Canada. Let's see if Bute can recover and learn something from his loss. I just think that Froch is being too cocky. I think he got lucky and got through and took out the legs of a movement fighter and then capitalized on that. I don't know how else to explain why a crafty, intelligent fighter goes down by knockout in the 5th round. Moving on now, our last subject. We are 1 day away from the second biggest fight of the year, at least on paper. You have to give Mayweather the advantage here. Mayweather versus Cotto was a huge fight. It was huge in terms of promotion, HBO pay-per-view, a lot of good marketing for that fight, and it delivered in terms of action. A very good fight, competitive fight, and that's the hottest fight of the year so far. Now, this fight against Manny Pacquiao and Timothy Bradley, which I think is the second biggest fight of the year on paper, could end up being the biggest fight of the year in terms of action. It's not going to be the biggest fight of the year in terms of pay-per-view because the undercard is not nearly as strong as Alvarez versus Mosley. But in terms of main event stuff, this is good stuff. Manny Pacquiao, who many consider to be the pound-for-pound king, I don't. I think Mayweather has that title. I think Pacquiao's probably the 3rd or 4th best pound-for-pound guy out there. But Manny Pacquiao is fighting an undefeated fighter in Timothy Bradley this Saturday, tomorrow, on pay-per-view, HBO. I believe it's also going to be available on Top Rank streaming. I've watched the last 2 Pacquiao fights from Bob Arum's Top Rank boxing site. So search for Top Rank Boxing and you can probably find a link. That's how I'll be watching the fight tomorrow night. But it's happening, and it's a big fight, and it's a big fight because not only is Pacquiao a big household name, one of the top 2 or 3 pound-for-pound guys, but he's fighting an undefeated fighter in Timothy Bradley, who's young and in his prime. Manny Pacquiao has not fought a fighter in his prime in some time. He fought De La Hoya, had a sensational victory over him, but De La Hoya was old. He fought Ricky Hatton, who just got busted up by Floyd Mayweather, and Ricky wasn't a spring chicken himself. He fought Miguel Cotto, but Cotto was busted up from Margarito, getting old in years. But now we have Timothy Bradley, a guy in his mid to late 20s, undefeated, tremendous unhuman conditioning, a hard head, fast, and a will that is hard to describe. Timothy Bradley does not know how to lose. And if you've watched the HBO 24/7 videos, there's, I believe, 3 out now, you'll learn that right away, that Timothy Bradley is a very confident and stubborn fighter. He does not know how to lose. He's sure he's going to win. His work ethic is second to none. Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather work out hard, really hard. But I think Bradley may work out harder. This guy is incredible. But in terms of the X's and O's here, because boxing, as we know, is a sport in which styles make fights. X's and O's here say that, in my opinion, I'll get right to the point here, I'm picking Pacquiao in this fight. I'm not picking him in a decision. I'm not picking him In a split decision, I'm picking Pacquiao by knockout because I believe that's what will happen based on X's and O's. And two, I believe that's what must happen. And Pacquiao probably knows that. I watched ESPN. They have a thing that comes out before all the major fights where they break it down per round, who has the advantage on stamina, on coaching, on intangibles, and speed. And one thing I was surprised to see is the ESPN picked Bradley on speed. Manny Pacquiao has most of the advantages in that 12-round comparison. But Bradley has the advantage on speed, according to ESPN, at least the writer who wrote that. And I don't see that. Even Freddie Roach said in a recent YouTube video, available out there, maybe I'll link to it on the post here, that Bradley's a slow fighter and he can't punch, so we have nothing to worry about. So I'm not sure why Freddie Roach would say Bradley's slow, and then an expert ESPN analyst say that he's fast. One is wrong, the other one is right. I believe that Bradley is a combination fighter, and he gives the appearance of being fast because of all the movement in inside, and he does throw quick, compact punches, but I don't think that he's as fast as Pacquiao. So I was a little bit taken back when they said that he was faster than Pacquiao. What advantages does Bradley have, though? That's the question. What does he have that can make this fight a competitive one? I think that he has the advantages of stamina and conditioning. I think he has the advantages of will and heart. He's the Rocky Balboa here. He's got skill for sure. But the heart factor, the intangibles, are really on his side. This guy does not know how to lose, as I said. However, he's coming up to 147 for only the second time. He did fight Luis Carlos Abreu in 2010, and he looked fast against a slow fighter. But his punches are loopy and telegraphed. I encourage you to watch the YouTube video. As Freddie Roach recently said, he's fast at 140, Tim Bradley is, but not at 147. This is another fight, this Bradley-Abreu fight, in which we should have seen a knockout. We should have seen a finish. Bradley had him in trouble, but no finish by Bradley. This reminds me of the Peterson fight at 140. Peterson was in big trouble early, but no finish by Bradley. The conclusion is Bradley is soft-fisted, even as his record indicates. But the short, muscular, compact stature of Bradley, who throws for volume, gives the illusion of speed. He's no faster than Ricky Hatton, in my opinion. Floyd, Manny, Devin, and maybe even Miguel Cotto look faster, in my eyes, at 147 than Tim Bradley. Look what happened with Kendall Holt. Almost picturesque of Pacquiao Hatton. He got in close, throwing looping punches, and he gets flattened. Now, to Tim's credit, he picked himself off the mat and won the fight. But Holt is no Pacquiao. That's what makes this fight so interesting. If you do take advantage of Tim's sloppiness at times and the big looping punches, you better finish him, because he will get off the floor and will fight until the last bell. And I just think that Pacquiao has too much experience and too much thunder at 147 for Bradley. But I think that Pacquiao is going to have to knock him out in the early to middle rounds, because if you leave around a guy, if you let him hang around, a guy who's stubborn, hard-headed, known for headbutts, strong-willed, extremely conditioned, that doesn't work out for you. Pacquiao is going to have to do a Ricky Hatton job on this guy, and I'm thinking that's what's going to happen, is that Bradley will walk into something, and he'll understand what a real 147 champion is all about, a prize fighter. Not an Abreu, but a world-class 147 legitimate pound-for-pound guy. Again, don't make too much about the Timothy Bradley-Abreu fight, because why hasn't Abreu fought Miguel Cotto or Joshua Clottey? He bounces around between 147 and 154, but he's not fought the big prize fighter. He's not fought there's the A class and the B class. There's no Clottey. There's no Cotto. There's certainly no Mayweather. And there's certainly no Pacquiao. There's no Margarito. There's no Mayorga. There's no Mosley. Where are the the big fights on his resume, his biggest fight was against Tim Bradley. That's the only prize fighter he's fought. Some people think that Pacquiao is really not that heavy-fisted at 147, and I understand the argument. Most of his knockouts come from below 147, but we do have to remember, as I mentioned earlier, I alluded to Shane Mosley, he's been knocked down by 2 fighters. He was knocked down by Vernon Forrest twice in 1 round. That was at 154. Okay? So, junior middle by a legitimate 154 guy, a heavy-fisted prime Vernon Forrest, knocked Mosley down. The next guy to knock Mosley down was Manny Pacquiao in the 3rd round of his fight last year. And Mosley said that he's never fought anybody as fast or as strong as Manny Pacquiao. I just want Bradley to appreciate that and to prepare for that. Bradley gets inside a lot. He's a little bit reckless. And if he gets caught by a legitimate 147 puncher, Pacquiao, namely the left overhand, I think it's over. And that's my prediction on the fight, is that Manny Pacquiao, because of his experience, speed, and power at 147, is going to be too much for Timothy Bradley. But it has to get done early, because if it doesn't, we might see Pacquiao's legs cramping up, as they did in his last 2 fights with JMM and Mosley, and we might have a controversial decision. But you got to remember this, too. We're still trying to keep alive this Manny Pacquiao-Floyd Mayweather sweepstakes. Okay? That's why Pacquiao won the last fight. He got his butt kicked, in my opinion, by JMM for the 3rd time. And that's the second reason why I think that Pacquiao will win, because he has to win. Nobody wants that Pacquiao-Mayweather fight to fall apart. We all keep our hopes alive. But Pacquiao will win that fight. He'll win it by knockout. And Timothy Bradley and Amir Khan can fight, for all I care. I like Tim. I'm very impressed with his character. He's a family man, loves his family. He's not about flair, doesn't have a big road crew with him, a big entourage. I like that. He's a good guy, but I think that he's going to be outmatched here by Manny Pacquiao Saturday night, tomorrow night, and you better watch it, because it could be a competitive fight if the early knockout doesn't happen, and it might even be more competitive than Cotto-Mayweather. So I like that fight for Manny Pacquiao. Too fast, too much power, too much experience at 147, too good of a corner. I think he's hungry now, with the new spiritual revival and awakening and conversion. He's a different fighter, no distractions, no camp problems, aside from that moron conditioning coach. And it's going to be a good night for boxing. And just after that fight, by the way, we're going to have a French Open final in tennis. I'm a huge boxing fan, but I'm a huge tennis fan too. We're going to see probably Rafa Nadal against either Federer or Djokovic. So you get 2 for 1 this weekend. Love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm as confident in a Pacquiao pick as I am in a Rafa Nadal pick in the French Open final that happens Sunday. Pacquiao's back. I think his subpar performances from against Mosley and Juan Manuel Marquez are behind him, and Bradley has taken on something a little bit beyond his caliber. However, the X factor for Tim Bradley is his conditioning, his hard-headedness, his headbutts, his will. It's a matter of Pacquiao's execution, folks. If he executes what he's capable of doing, he wins. If he's focused, knockout. So Pacquiao by knockout, middle rounds. I'm going to say round 7. You heard it right here on prizefights.us. Round 7, Pacquiao by knockout. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.